You're listening to the Dead Padawans Society, a science fiction and fantasy podcast celebrating the ideas, mythologies, and truths in iconic works of sci-fi. I'm your host, Brett Inman, joined by...
Nic Dennis!
Nick Dennis!
How are you?
I'm doing very well this week. I feel like we always start every episode with that, and it's such a mundane question. How are you? Like we haven't been talking for the last hour.
That's true. How are you, listener? Like, how are you? I don't want you to feel left out in this.
Yeah, we always ask each other, but how are you?
Yeah. Brett, what you been up to lately? What's been your latest obsession?
I have recently rediscovered my love of choose your own adventure books.
Oh, yeah. Now has Bandersnatch
that probably
was
was what sparked it. So, yeah, the Black Mirror episode Bandersnatch released, what was it, around Christmas?
Yeah, it was right at Christmas.
Yeah. And yeah, I watched that, but then I also, as a result of watching that, the format was interesting to me. And so Netflix has some other programs that have used that, actually several children's shows. Mm-hmm. And so I started watching some of that other stuff, which made me realize I really just want to read this. Like, it's so that I loved that form as like a preteen.
Yeah.
And so
where you choose, you dog ear that page in case you hated where you went, that you could go back to that spot. Yeah, there's some of that in the Bandersnatch where you can go back to those spots, but it's not like a book where you could go at your own pace and you can stop whenever you want. Yeah, I haven't done one of those in a long time.
So I actually have kept a lot of things from childhood. My parents were super gracious to let me store a bunch of stuff at their house for a long time.
That is nice.
And then finally I had to go through and get rid of a bunch of stuff, but then take a lot of things back with me. And so I've still got all of my Goosebumps books. And I started out reading just the novelizations, Goosebumps, various stories. And then whenever they launched that line, I was like, what is this? And so I actually transitioned from, I stopped really being interested in the novels, and instead anytime those Give Yourself Goosebumps books came out, that was what I wanted. And so I still have a set of the first like 20 or so.
Well, kids of our generation, that's where we were introduced to choose your own adventure in the Goosebumps books.
Oh yeah,
because plenty of books had done it before Goosebumps had. I mean, those were popular in the 80s. And these were in the 90s. But yeah, that's where I first got into those. And they were so small. Like Goosebumps books were you could get through them so quick that, yeah, whenever Scholastic Days, you remember Scholastic Days? Do they still have Scholastic Days?
The schools? Company still exists. I assume they still have Scholastic. If not, they need to bring those back because those were amazing. Those book fairs were great.
It was like with the age of the internet. I don't know what has lasted or not. But anyway, those, man, I love Scholastic Days, and Goosebumps was the hot ticket. You know that they had to have those suckers packed and ready to go for kids because, yeah, that's what I wanted to get was Goosebumps and specifically Choose Your Own Adventure books.
So I love those, but then I also, as a result of digging some of those out and realizing, oh, these are written for children, I have...
the quality has not risen.
Quite aged.
It's still fun to choose, but the choices are just really mundane and not as fun as what you thought when you were a kid.
Yeah, I still actually, again, saving everything from my childhood, because I was interested in those, I can remember as a kid whenever we'd go to like a used bookstore or something, if some of those like, 1980s Choose Your Own Adventure books, if I ever found one of those, I would get it. I actually have one that's Star Trek. I think it's titled Voyage to Adventure or something like that, but it's a Choose Your Own Adventure book set in the Captain Kirk era of Star Trek. And so that's it's actually currently on my nightstand, and I've been going through, and it's fun because, I mean, as a kid you would just devour it and like follow every possible path. As an adult, I'll pick it up and I'll read one story. And so it's kind of like I have to sort of remember, okay, which decisions did I make last time? Let me try a different path.
Oh, really? So you'll go all the way to the end one way and then start it over with that one?
Yep.
Now, is that a Kirk Enterprise story? Not another ship during the Kirk time?
Nope. And it's interesting because you initially start out by kind of deciding what part of the crew you want to serve in, and then that begins you down a path. And so you may be working in engineering with Scotty, you may be in the science lab with Spock, or you may be on the bridge with Kirk. And that's where your mission kind of launches out.
So you're an actual character in the book as well.
Yeah.
Oh, that's fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now going back to the Goosebumps ones. So you did read through one?
Oh yeah, I've read through a handful of them.
Now are the choices? This is what I'd be interested in. Are the choices so like glaringly obvious? Of you want to go this way, not that way.
No, and that's actually one of the things that it almost is frustrating sometimes to read those because I've discovered, especially as as a kid, you didn't think about it. You're just like, oh, I'm going to go this direction, and things happen, and again, you're dog-earing the pages so that if you made the wrong choice, you can go back to that last choice.
Yeah.
But I'm surprised you can't figure out most of the time like what's going to happen one way or the other. You may be like, oh, this makes the most sense to go this direction, and then no, straight up that was a terrible decision. You're going to die. You should have. There was one. So I was reading the very first Give Yourself Goosebumps book, and you cross a bridge, and as you're crossing the bridge, it gives way. It's a rickety old bridge. And it gives you the choice of to try to grab on to save yourself or to flap your wings like a bird or your arms like a bird. And I'm like, well, that's stupid. I'm going to try to grab it. No, guess what? That was the wrong decision to make. You were supposed to flap like a bird, and then a gust of wind comes and carries you over to the other side. I kid you not. That was what happened.
You're a normal person?
You are a normal person. Yes. Yes.
That makes no sense whatsoever.
It does not make any sense. And there was no way to, again, the thing that seems natural to do was the bad choice.
Does it come out that you're a metahuman in some way?
Again, it just says you flap your arms. Like you're just like trying.
I know, but like later, I would think if this explains it later to where you're actually a mutant that can fly.
Well, and to me the bridge thing didn't even make sense anyway, because it's the very first one was you go to the Carnival of Terror or something like that. And I'm like, why is there a chasm and a bridge in this carnival? Like, what is this? So so that there are a lot of those that it's just frustrating because you can't figure out. Now the thing I like about the Star Trek one that I've been reading, there is some sense to which you can kind of, if you're making a certain decision, you can kind of tell the direction that's going to lead you a little bit. Like if you think about it. So that's more satisfying to me, is that you can kind of try to see through the decision and actually make the best possible decision.
That's really cool. On the Bandersnatch, because I went through several possibilities when watching that on Netflix. The first time through, I intentionally tried to pick the bad option each time, like the one that would absolutely be less appealing, and wondering would this be like the quick end of if you do that then game over, you die or it's done. And I found that more often than not, no, that was the way I should have gone.
Because the first time I went through, I actually tried to make decisions that I thought were in the best interest of the character or reasonable. Yeah. And a lot of times those were really dissatisfying decisions to make.
Because the first time I said, they offered me the job and I said no, thinking that'll throw a wrench into this, but it's actually
that was the right choice.
The right choice to go. The time that it went against me was when the choice of spoilers for Bandersnatch.
Yikes.
But when it asked if you wanted to jump off the roof of that or make the other guy jump off, and I was like, I'm gonna jump off. Like, where's that gonna go? And I was thinking, this will all be a fever dream, something crazy because he's on acid. But no, I jumped off and I died.
Congratulations.
And I was like, that makes sense. I thought I was playing into it, so it did a pretty good job of swerving left when you thought you should do right or something like that. Yeah. But
I enjoy the form of choose your own adventure stories. I've actually thought about I may try to write one even. So
they can be incredibly frustrating, but they can also be incredibly rewarding, especially when you get on a good path and you get to a conclusion that you are very happy with. That can be very satisfying.
Oh
yeah.
So what have you been obsessed with lately?
Well, I've been completely satisfied with staying indoors and watching a ton of Parks and Rec. That has been, I don't know what got me on this. For Christmas, I got a...
Is this your first time watching the show?
No, I've seen it.
Okay.
I've watched
so this
through...
is a rewatch.
Yeah, it's a rewatch. I've watched through it before and through the whole way through, and I've watched sections of it at times. But this, I was like, I'm just going to go through the whole thing again. I think it started with, I got a mug for Christmas that was JJ's Diner, which is it's a diner in the show that Leslie Knope always goes to and gets waffles.
The waffle place, yeah.
Yeah, the waffle place. So it's a mug that looks like a diner mug, and it has JJ's Diner. And I love in-universe gifts. Like anything that exists in the universe of the thing that it's made for, I love. I love those types of things because, like, you know, I can get a T-shirt with Star Wars on it, but if I got and that's cool, I like that. But if I had the Medal of Yavin, like, that's super cool. Like, and those are,
you would wear it all the time.
I would probably never wear it. I'd get a nice display case for it. I love that. I made a golden snitch a while back.
You did, yeah.
That I have in a nice glass case, and that I have for display, and I love that thing. Because
you need to post a picture.
Yeah, I'll post a picture of that. But I love it because it looks like you could set it on set of Harry Potter and it would fit right in. I love that kind of stuff. I got a Marauders map as well.
Oh, that's cool.
And that sucker is super detailed. It looks like, I think they took the real prop and made these that you can buy.
Yeah, you got the keys from Ready Player One too.
Yeah, I've got those. Yeah, any in-universe thing I love. So when I got that mug for Christmas, I was like, I love this. I'm going to be drinking out of this every day. And sure enough, I brought it to work and I drink my coffee in it every day.
Oh, nice.
But then I was like, man, I really want to watch Parks and Rec again. So it's been super like bitter cold outside. And so I've not wanted to go to the park with my kid or anything. I'm just like, let's just stay in and
let's watch people who work at parks.
Yeah. I'll watch people who are at parks instead of going to a park. Here, let my kid watch Shopkins. Like, hey, you watch Shopkins, I'll watch Parks and Rec. And so, yeah, I've been burning through those episodes because I just love the characters. It's a hilarious show.
Who's your favorite character?
Ooh, favorite character. I really like Ron. I mean, Ron.
Who doesn't?
Who doesn't love Ron? But I like Ben because he's a nerd.
Oh.
And I love it too because when he's first introduced, he's just kind of like a hard-nosed, hard to deal with character that no one really likes, and then he softens up, and then you start getting to know like who he is outside of work.
Yeah.
And he's just a super nerd that when people get things wrong, he feels like he has to correct them. And I'm like, I know what you're talking about. I love you.
Yeah, I feel like the way they fleshed that character out, like he grew a lot.
Yeah.
Because at first, yeah.
Yeah, I just watched the episode where she, for their anniversary, she bought him the Iron Throne from Game of Thrones. It's like, it is the legit prop. I mean, in universe again, gift. And it's legitimate, and he makes the dumbest face whenever she gets him awesome gifts.
Yeah.
And
so what you're saying is you're Ben. You like Ben because
I like Ben because
you.
that's me. Yeah, because he gets sweet gifts like that, and I want to be like him.
Yeah. Well, and what our audience may not know is that you can be a little anal too in the way that he is about having things in precision.
Absolutely.
And,
Except for he's a very left brain guy with his numbers and analytics and stuff like that he does, whereas I'm very right brained in art and stuff like that. But yeah, I'd probably say Ben and Ron. Obviously, everyone loves Ron. I keep wanting to say Ron Burgundy, but not Ron Burgundy.
No, Ron Swanson.
Ron Swanson. That's right. Yeah. They're both mustachioed men's men, kind of.
That's true.
Yeah. So,
but I don't think anybody wants to live like Ron Burgundy in the way that people want. People want to be Ron Swanson.
Yes.
Like he is like a state to achieve as much as he is a person or
character. My dad is Ron Swanson. And I think that's what they modeled that character as, like America's Midwest dad. That a lot of us grew up because my dad has always had a big mustache. He's a welder. He's kind of a no nonsense man's man kind of kind of guy, and there's a lot of similarities. My siblings have all said, yeah, that's pretty much a dad. So yeah, and that works well too because he gives a lot of sage wisdom through the episodes and the series, and so that fits really well for his character. And then he actually becomes a dad. I just watched where, like, he marries another woman who has 2 kids, and then they have a kid. And
that's right. Yeah. I have forgotten a lot of things. I've only seen the show once, so
yeah, there's a lot in the later seasons that I've been like, oh yeah, I forgot this happened. I forgot about this character coming in. Billy Eichner comes in late in the series and is incredible.
Wait, is he a regular?
Yeah, he's in. It's when Eagleton merges. And he joins the department, and that was my first time I ever saw Billy Eichner in anything. And like, his character is purposefully annoying, and I'm like, I hate this guy. But now on rewatch, I'm like, this is genius and hilarious. Yeah. So
you've been dodging the cold with your rewatch.
Yeah, stay inside under a blanket, watch Parks and Recs. Do not get out in the cold.
To avoid the cold, not unlike the people that we're going to be talking about today.
What are we talking about, Brett?
We're talking about Snowpiercer.
Oh, very nice.
Right here in the
great film.
Cold weeks. Yeah,
It's not as cold as this stinking movie. It is
true.
Ridiculously cold. End of world cold.
Yeah, so Snowpiercer is a 2013 film directed by Bong Joon-ho. A failed global warming experiment has killed off most life on Earth. The only survivors live on board the Snowpiercer. It's a train that travels around the globe via perpetual motion engine. When cryptic messages incite the passengers to revolt, the train thrusts full throttle.
Hey, Brett, hold on just a second. I've actually got some breaking news that's coming in right now.
We're not a news program.
No, believe me, I can't let you go any further because I'm getting reports right now that train has just derailed outside of Philadelphia.
The Snowpiercer is derailed?
Yes. It is just derailed and caused a devastating crash. There are lots of casualties.
I mean, there's somebody has to survive, right? I mean, Chris Evans, maybe?
I'm hearing all passengers but one have been confirmed dead at this time. There's a lone survivor that seems to be unharmed. Law enforcement officials have yet to determine the cause of this crash, but there are already many speculating that this might be the work of known terrorist Elijah Price, more commonly known as Mr. Glass.
Mr. Glass?
Bum, bum, bum.
What a twist!
Yeah.
Snowpiercer just got derailed by Glass?
That's true. This is not a Snowpiercer episode. We were going to do that, but then Glass came out and kicked everybody in the teeth, and so we decided that we were going to push Snowpiercer and talk about the movie Glass.
So,
in true form, just like a M. Night Shyamalan twist, here's the twist. We're not talking about that. We're talking about this.
So it was actually, this came out of, so we were talking a week ago after both of us had seen the film, and because we were of the way we were talking about this movie, I'm like, we've got to do an episode about this. Like, there's no other choice.
And we try not to do, like, we try to talk about films that have been out for a while so that it's not hot takes and we've had time to sit with it and something to permeate the culture a little bit before discussing it. But this, because it is connected to films, one that is a few years old and one that is
basically 20 years old.
Almost 20 years old now, that we couldn't resist talking about it because another big thing is this movie Glass is very divisive right now, whereas the other two films have garnered with Unbreakable a lot of praise, split a fair amount of praise, whereas this one, which is the end, I guess, the final chapter of this trilogy, is very contested as to, is it a good film? Right now, you've got your critics saying one thing and your fans or audience saying another thing, and a lot of different perspectives on this. And through talking together, we're like, we really want to talk about this.
Let's just, from this point on, Spoilers
Yeah,
for Glass.
Second spoiler warning.
Yeah.
We're going to get into Glass. We're most likely going to be getting into Split and Unbreakable here. Not as much focused on those two films.
I mean, we will definitely be spoiling those films.
Right,
though.
because there's necessary things that lead into this movie that would be in those films. And so, yeah, spoiler warning, if you haven't seen any of these or one of these at least, don't listen any further. Go check out Glass, I would say. It's in theaters right now.
I highly recommend it, yeah.
Even if you hate it, it's a very interesting watch. Most of the critics I have read or listened to, they still agree that it is a very interesting movie. And
I don't know. I feel like there are some that don't hold that opinion, that especially in the world of Marvel films and the Nolan verse, I feel like
that is true. I ran into one specifically that did not care for this in the least, but I would say most critics they're not liking it for what it has done, but the concepts put forward, I would say for an audience, for any random audience member.
For our audience, for sure.
And and especially if you love sci-fi. This is definitely worth a watch. So, yeah, spoilers from here on out. Just a few things before we get into the topic, which we're going to be focusing on why do people love this movie? Why do people hate this movie? And we're going to be giving our perspectives on why we're, seeing that, what we think about it, and where we fall on this at the very end. But before we get into that, there's a lot of negative reaction for this last film. It's M. Night Shyamalan, as most of you I'm sure know. Right now, the box office for this movie, I thought it was interesting. It's at 166 million worldwide currently when we're recording this. So 166 million off of a 20 million budget.
Yeah, the budget was tiny on this
for
film.
this, which when looking back, I found interesting. The budget for Unbreakable. You want to guess what that was?
I can't begin to, with the star power that it had, that Shyamalan at his peak was behind it.
Yeah, this was before or after?
This was after The Sixth Sense.
After Sixth Sense. So people are throwing money at him.
Yeah, he exploded on the stage.
Okay. So
I'm going to say over 100 mil.
No, it was 75.
Okay.
So 75 million.
I mean, yeah.
Split 9 million. Mm-hmm. And then this 20. So with the love for Split, more was given for this.
Well, let's be real about where the money went for this film.
Oh, where?
You have Bruce Willis and Samuel L. Jackson.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
That's got to be a huge I would actually imagine that this film probably, besides those two factors, probably did not cost much more than Split.
Well, and McAvoy as well. He is not to their level because they've had such a long career, but he's been in so much big box office fare that I would say he has a pretty good price tag as well.
Probably, and Sarah Paulson pulls some.
Yeah.
But I would say the big two for sure.
Yeah. Well, definitely, most of this money probably went to
honestly,
the actors.
if you take 10 million off the price tag, then like 5 million for one of them, 5 million for the other one, and you've got the budget of Split.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah.
That's true. Which, because they didn't have either of them except for Willis in a very tiny scene. But yeah, you add those two. That's why it's 20 million now.
That would not surprise me. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if this film could have even cost less. I don't know, with some of the effects scenes that they did.
Yeah, there's some effect scenes. The building that they put up, that's a kind of, I think that's a CGI building.
Yeah.
It didn't have a lot to do, but it was definitely had to be modeled, and so that obviously costs money. But when looking at that, $75 million for Unbreakable, it kind of blew my mind that it like it was that much, and then the second movie in the series, obviously people didn't realize that's what it was when it came out, but it was only 9 million. It's such a drastic drop, and I know part of that has to do with like Shyamalan's name, where it had gotten to there, but just the idea of what it costs to make a film, how drastic a difference that is, and you still get a very like a quality film in Split that cinematically on screen, for me, I don't see a huge difference in quality between it and Unbreakable. Am I wrong there? You have a better eye for cinematography.
Yeah, the scope of Unbreakable is a lot bigger. So because Split, they spend most of the time underneath the zoo in those like, tunnels or whatever.
That's true.
So that kind of limitation, and that shows up in Glass as well, where they spend the majority of the film in a single location.
Right. It's indoors a lot. Where, now that I'm thinking back to Unbreakable, there are a lot of shots of like in Philadelphia as well. And so
with
streets cost money. That makes sense.
Yeah. So I would say that's part of it. Because of the time that these films have been made, in all likelihood, Unbreakable was not shot digitally, whereas there's a decent likelihood that the other two have been. I haven't looked this up, so I'm completely speculating.
So like the cost of film itself.
Cost to produce it would be higher.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. You also, Bruce Willis didn't do as much in this film, and so with less time on screen, and that one that was like peak Bruce Willis.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too. That was back in Bruce Willis's heyday, where he was making bank and a ton of features.
Same thing for Samuel Jackson. That's really, he,
even both of them showing up in another franchise together. Yep. They were right around the same time. So, they were, still big stars, but that was kind of where they were at their peak. And so, I could probably see.
So, you get that. And then, again, Shyamalan at that time was the wunderkind. He could do no wrong. So, I definitely understand that. One thing that's interesting to me, so Split and Glass have both been produced under Blumhouse, run by Jason Blum. And so you actually get into the, who's producing these films. That's also a factor. And part of the Blumhouse model is let's produce it for super cheap and earn a lot of money.
Yeah. Make it on the cheap, and then the difference in your box office is where you're going to gain it all back. Yep. Because I hear a lot of times that whatever your production budget is for your marketing, so double it. Yeah. And so if you double this budget right here, that's $40 million for Glass right now. And so at 166 that it's already pulled in, and it's not anywhere close to the end of its theatrical run. Yeah. That's already 120 bank right there if that double is correct. And so that is a hefty return, regardless of what people think about your film. That is a very hefty return and a good investment. Yeah. So getting into the critical response. Right now on Rotten Tomatoes, the critics' score, a cumulative score, is at 36%.
And I've seen it as low as 33%.
Oh, has it dipped lower before?
Well, yeah. So it has actually, it's come up from the last time
I grabbed this today. 36%. A whole 40 points higher, the audience score is 76%.
And it actually has come down a point. So from whenever I looked at it, it was higher.
Oh, it was higher. It was at 77.
Yep.
Okay. So 40% difference, which made me interested to know what his previous films, what the scores on those. And of course, time changes scores on Rotten Tomatoes while people go back to movies and change
films fluctuate a lot. But
yes, they very much will, and I'm sure this percentage will change over time. But I went back and looked at a lot of his movies, and they're actually audience score and critic score are usually pretty consistent within 5 to 10% of each other. Sometimes critics liking it a little bit more than audience, or vice versa.
Mm-hmm.
And
But they're usually pretty close.
They're usually pretty close. Like, critics and audiences alike hated Airbender and Lady in the Water and The Happening. Like, those were him at his bottom right there. And
I love The Happening.
really, I've never seen The Happening. I think
You have to watch it ironically, but
if you watch it ironically,
yeah.
okay. And then you've got The Village, which I think that's like a 13-point difference with the audience liking it more.
That's interesting.
I'm actually a fan of The Village. I know a lot of people hate it, but when it came out, I was young when I saw it, and I was a fan because of Signs and Unbreakable and The Sixth Sense. And when I watched it, I quite enjoyed it, and I enjoyed the twist even. I know a lot of people hated that twist, but
I liked it.
I liked it.
Yeah.
And so I never, back then I didn't understand the hate for it. Now I can understand some critics not liking it. But anyway, it's been fairly consistent. None of his films have been this different between critics and
Which
and
of his
fans.
films were certified fresh?
Certified. There's some that are fresh and some that are certified fresh. I don't know where you get
Where the difference is?
where that percentage is for them. I mean, Signs was fresh. Unbreakable, Sixth Sense, The Visit was fresh, although I don't think certified, because it was like high 60s, I think, something like that. That's one that critics actually liked it more than the audience. Audience scores a little lower than that, and so it's funny how it fluctuates between there, but they're still close around the same score, and so it makes sense that their critics and audience are kind of on par for what they think about his stuff.
So this one,
But this one is not like any of those, which is odd when the previous two films in this series, in this trilogy, are high score for both.
yeah.
And so this is where we're like, we really want to talk about this. And so my question is, WTF, Brett?
Whoa.
WTF.
My mom might listen to this.
Why the fervor?
Oh, thank you for clarifying.
Yes. Why the fervor and why the frost? The frost is coming from the critics because they got the cold shoulders. You like what I did there? They're kind of,
and it's winter and
it's winter, yeah. So they're freezing this out. I had to come up with another F, but yeah.
Yeah. Well, there you go.
So
You and your alliteration.
why? What? Let's start with you though. What is it? Give me just one positive that you really like about this movie, and then give me a negative so we keep it even.
So one of the things that I really liked about this movie was the overall look of the film, and this is represented by things like the color palette and things like that. But I would say the thing that I was most enamored with in the look of the film and the way it was shot was the shot on the train, where it's a flashback to the scene in Unbreakable, and you see Crumb's dad, and then you pull out into the aisle, and in the background there's a lady walking with the blue like crop top shirt, and then you come over.
Is that the one he hits on?
Yeah. And so you then track across a row of seats, and then there's David Dunn from the shot that opens Unbreakable, and then it pans back across, and then you're in the film Unbreakable. And so that moment to me was awesome. Like I loved just thinking about the way that they had to think through and execute that was real. I'm like, that's fun. Sort of a Lion King 1.5 version of Unbreakable.
Well, yeah, because it was cutting into that old footage and then going back, and to get that smooth transition between the two, that had to have taken a good bit of work and blocking to make sure that you had your angles and camera and everything
that you saw
just
what
right.
you needed to see and didn't see too much.
Yeah.
And again,
and that shot is very Shyamalan because he loves panning. He loves reveal here and then pan across to reveal something else and then go back to see again, and so very much in the vein of his style as well. So him doing that, that was pretty cool.
That was fun. As for something I didn't like, I guess it would be the way that they left out the sidekicks for a lot of the movie. And I don't know what to call them, but the characters Joseph Dunn,
They're plus ones.
Casey Cook, the plus ones.
Yeah.
For me, especially because they end up being really significant to the story by the end, there are points in the movie where they don't matter. And I feel like if they had been more naturally integrated into the whole story, that for me would have worked a little better. But I mean, a lot of it, I want to see them more because I was interested and invested in them in as much as I was the three supers.
Well, yeah, part of just these characters coming back, like David Dunn and Mr. Glass, those characters connected to them. Like you get a little bit of his son is working with him. They have a shop now. You don't really know what his mother has been doing.
She died.
What? She's dead in this film?
She straight up is dead.
She's a ghost?
Yes. So the next film is going to be her partnering with... No, she was dead. She had cancer and died.
What?
Yes.
What are you talking? No.
Oh, you're
Glass's
talking about
mother.
I thought you were talking about Joseph's mom.
Oh yeah, Robin Wright is dead in this film.
I was like, how did you miss that?
Jenny, you're gone. Yeah. No, that was sad. I liked I liked how they did that scene where he obviously told her, because in Unbreakable, he keeps it a secret from his wife of who he is and what he's doing. And then it has, she's gone, but you don't know why at that point, where she is. And I thought at that point that maybe she did leave him because their marriage had been on the rocks before. And it does that scene where he's like, I have to tell you something. But then you learn later that she had died of cancer. But yeah, so you get a little bit fleshed out of their life, but like Elijah's mom, you don't get much with her.
Yeah, Casey, she's just not. You don't completely understand why she's there. I mean, there's kind of a weird Stockholm syndrome kind of thing going on.
And she's like back in school. I mean, it's only been a couple weeks between these films, and so yeah. I guess there's not a lot to catch up on with her, but yeah, I feel like they could have gotten more play.
Yeah, and that they're present and then they just kind of drop out, and it's like,
and then they're back when they need to be. And then they're back
when they need to be, exactly
at the kind of final scene
at the right moment.
Yeah,
precisely at the same time.
Which that is like a high camera angle when they all show up at the same time. I would have maybe liked to see. Like, I got a text message to come here or something like that, almost like Glass had orchestrated making sure they were there as well as witnesses of the event.
Yeah, or even, if they didn't all arrive at like the same time, if somebody had already been present, if they just had been integrated into the rest of the story a little bit more.
Yeah, I could see that. Because then and we'll get into that in a bit, that they're pretty integral to the last part of the film.
Yeah. So what did you like and dislike?
I really liked in this movie, and this is something that I know a lot of critics did not like. I liked the world building that happened in this movie. That you've had Unbreakable, you had the concept of superheroes amongst us. Then you have Split, which you don't even realize is in universe, and then there's the twist of, oh, he's one of them. But now you get into where you put all these players together. How do they fit together in this world? And then, of course, the reveal of the organization coming into play. I feel like that is really good, regardless of how you feel about that twist and where it went and that organization, who they are as a whole. I feel like that is still really good world building because it deepens the lore of the past and what has been happening in these people's lives. And so, I mean, some would say might say it's clumsy or bad world building, but it's world building, and I think it was executed well for reasons we'll get into. But I really like that because superhero worlds are vast, and there are a lot of things that come into play in them. And so bringing them together and fleshing that world out a little bit, and then setting some things together that could possibly amount to more afterward. That's also world building that I really enjoyed that part. One, and this then goes into my negative for the film, is that there's no more story. that the Shyamalan has said that this is the last. Now, maybe this is the last he's going to do, and somebody else plays in this sandbox in the future. Maybe that'll happen. But I wanted, like, where the story ended, like, I wanted more story. Basically, like, I wanted to see more, and maybe that's just Shyamalan in his style. He's gonna end it where he wants, and then you speculate. That's kind of the fun of his movies as well. You speculate of what comes next now that this has been revealed and this has
Sixth
happened.
Sense was that way.
Yeah, the Village as well. Like, what happens now after she goes back into the town and she knows the truth? How will that community change? And a lot of his films are like that. Where, I mean, Signs, you get a little bit. You kind of get this is everything. I mean, in Signs, everything just goes back to normal. It seems like after the alien invasion, but but. I wanted, there were so many interesting things set up.
So for you, it wasn't necessarily, because we'll talk about the criticism in a minute, but there are a lot of people who seem kind of upset with what they did with these characters. You're interested in seeing the world beyond this point.
Because I think that the focus of this film was, I think the whole point of this film was making a future. And we're in spoilers, so I'll say the three main characters die, and so their story's done, which for a concluding chapter is perfect. They're done, story's over, but they die for a specific purpose, for something to grow out of that, and so I want to see what grows out of that. Like, I want to see what did that action, what did that event, how does that change the world? Does that change how it operates, the people in it? You get just a tiny taste of it at the end, but not much. And so that to me, afterward, I was like, I was talking. I went to see it with Daniel, and then afterward, we were like, "What could this be? What could this be?" And then I got online and saw Shyamalan's like, "Yeah, I'm done. That's it. This is the end." And I got kind of bummed there because I would love to see more.
Yeah, they need to give this property to Rian Johnson.
Oh, heck yeah!
Because then the next film would open with somebody watching the video and being like, "That's fake." yeah, just playing right into completely subvert. I mean, this film subverted expectations, but to do it even further. What was your so overall take? It was a positive and a negative. What was your just overall impression of the movie?
I left the film loving it, even though it surprised me in areas, and obviously the deaths of the three characters were very shocking to me, and I did not expect it to go down that way.
Did you go in with high expectations, or did you go in nervous?
Well, I had heard negative reviews. I had listened to one review specifically that had praise for it, and so I was like, oh, that's good. But then I saw the overall score being very bad, and I was like, oh, okay. And so that tempered my expectations a bit. So I went in about even, like, what am I about to get? It's Shyamalan. What is this going to be? Which I think is a great way to go into a Shyamalan movie of what am I about to be handed, because people have differing opinions on it. And so in that way, I feel like I was pretty balanced going into it. I
went in, I expected to like it and not love it. That was kind of where I was at. I'm like, I enjoy these other movies. Unbreakable, it's easy for me at the end of Unbreakable to be like, I love that movie. But if I ever were to watch it and stop about halfway through, I don't think I would say that I love it, because it's such a slow burn at the beginning. And we had just rewatched it before watching Glass. So for me, that was kind of fresh, that like, oh, this movie, well, in my head, after I haven't seen it for a while, gets really, really great. But to actually watch it, it's like, it's a good movie. And
right.
so, and then,
and without its ending, the rest of it is set up and no payoff.
Yeah. Split is another good movie. It's not my favorite movie of all time or the greatest movie that was ever made, but it's a good movie. And so both of them were good movies. And I kind of went in expecting that, and I feel like largely I got that. Like I walked out satisfied.
Same
with
here.
The experience. Yeah,
you walk in with a good taste in your mouth
Yeah.
because of the first two.
And I'll actually say that I was surprised by things in this film that in a positive way, and some of the twists actually really got me and worked in ways that I really really liked.
Yeah, specifically the secret society.
Oh,
because
see, the reveal, and again, it ties into one of my favorite things, or that shot on the train. But the reveal that Kevin was created in the train accident, which I didn't realize until thinking about it after the fact, but that's even foreshadowed in Split. Whenever Hedwig or whichever personality it is that Kevin has goes to turn into the beast, he gets flowers and he goes to a train, right, and lays the flowers down and turns into the beast.
Oh man!
So that was actually foreshadowed really really well.
You're blowing my mind right
Yeah.
now. I did not think about that.
Yeah.
That's when he first transforms, is in a random train car.
Yep.
Yeah.
So for me, that was really really interesting that they did that, and that it surprised me. And the thing was, and I should have thought it's Shyamalan, and I should have thought about The Village, because the first time I watched The Village, there's the initial twist where she faces off with one of the creatures in the woods, and well, there's the twist that the creatures are fake, right? Mm-hmm. And so then she faces off with one in the woods, and you're like, wait, I thought they were fake. Why is there this thing out here? And then it turns out to be
the mentally disturbed brother, I think, or cousin. Yeah.
And so that situation happens, and so like the first twist set you up to be really surprised by the second twist, and then by that point you're like, oh, he's twisted out at this point. And then you get the third twist of the film, which is that it's actually in modern day, and that whole thing. Mm-hmm. And so for me, that was really interesting, exciting the first time I saw The Village. And this movie did the same kind of thing. And so, but I went into it. It's some of Shyamalan's more recent films haven't really been that twisty. The Split even. There's sort of the twist that it's actually in the Unbreakable universe,
which is more of a reveal
Yeah.
at the end. It's not
it's
a huge game changer for that film.
Yeah,
per
it's
se.
it's a tag. It doesn't impact it's not connected to the story.
Yeah.
And so for me, that whenever it had that one twist in this film, I was like, oh, he executed a twist. Good job, Shyamalan. And I turned off my twist radar at that point, like in my brain.
There it is.
So I was like, nothing else. There will be no more twist. And there were still like 2 or 3 more. The reveal of the secret society was a big one.
The reveal that Glass had an in-game set up, which that was foreshadowed earlier with him in with the computers and such. But you could miss it.
I missed it.
Yeah,
I totally missed it. Like that was a complete surprise to me.
Well, and
the thing is, even I thought their plan had been foiled. Like I thought whenever they got outside.
Right. Shyamalan had done the magician's trick of the building. Look at the building. This is where they're going to have their showdown, to where you don't realize the showdown was never going to be at the building. And so that's a good, because it was pointing you there. I'm sure there were people who were like, oh, that's not going to happen because he's pushing it so hard. But I wasn't one. I was just along for the ride.
I was too. And the final act, again, the first one, I was kind of like, it's Shyamalan, there will probably be a twist. And so as soon as there was one, and it was a pretty good twist, I'm like, and that was his twist, and he's done. And then I'm like, wait, there's a secret organization that's been hiding right in front of us? Oh my.
Well, when that twist first happens, it first happens with the sniper taking the shot, which when that happened, it was a sniper with a clover on his wrist. And so my mind immediately went to, he's like a Hawkeye bullseye sharpshooter, and that's why he has a lucky clover, because he never misses. Like that was my super comics mind was going that way, and so I didn't even see it as a full group conspiracy right then. I was like, oh, this is a bad guy taking one of them out, kind of thing. And yeah, I didn't see that come. Some people will say the fact that you didn't see it coming is because it was poorly executed, that all of a sudden here's a secret organization. But I think on
But
rewatch,
Glass's twist was totally set up the whole time.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, and that one came out of nowhere for me. Like
Yeah.
I thought he'd been foiled. Like I was completely the misdirection that happened there.
yeah,
Yeah.
and I thought I thought the twist again was these heroes didn't make it out. The secret evil corporation or
Was the
society
one.
wins.
Yeah.
That's the end of this movie, and man, what a dark end that would be, and a shocking one as well. So let's get into. I have several points jotted down of criticisms that I've been hearing and seeing and watching online, things people are putting forward, and so I want to run through them to see, do we have us being the positive people on and really liking this movie? Can we answer these?
How do we respond to these?
Or do
this
these
is fun.
or do these cripple and break this movie?
Okay.
So I'm going to start off with some film criticism, and then we'll get into some in-universe criticism.
Let me get a pipe and put on a pair of glasses for this first one, so
Yeah.
I can be a good film snob.
So talking about the film itself and its execution. So first criticism is Shyamalan constantly tells instead of shows. He doesn't trust his audience.
That's a fair criticism.
I feel like that is a fair criticism, because there's a whole lot of, and the Ellie Staple character is the worst offender of it, that she is constantly saying, you're sick, you're delusional, this is what's happening in your brain, and that's because of this comic book idea and this comic book idea. And
see, for me, she kind of works because all of that is intended to be misdirect. That's her trying to convince them. For me, there are just lots of expositional scenes. Elijah has to explain everything that he does. And so, anything that happens, it can't just happen, but you also have to have somebody explaining what's happening at those times. And then I feel like
the Stable character in several scenes explains what she's doing with them.
That's true.
And she's using it in those comic book terms. And so I can see this, like, we get it. They think they're comic book characters.
Yeah, and I mean, part of that is a Shyamalan thing. Like, if Split's a good movie, but there's like the doctor.
Yeah,
she's totally there just
she's
to
explaining what he is, what he's doing a lot of the time. Yeah, that's very
and
true.
that some of his other films are super, and I mean, maybe that's because there's a certain degree to which you can't expect your audience to figure out too much, or your film becomes really obtuse. And so there's a certain amount of explaining that you almost need to do, and especially the weirder and more out there a concept is.
Right, because you need people to track, and you don't need everything coming out of left field.
But a lot of times you can show things clearly, and that suffices, and you don't need to have somebody prop that up. And yeah, it's a fair criticism. It doesn't ruin the film for me, but yeah. It's enough to say that it's not a perfect movie.
Yeah. So here's another one. You found this quote that I like. Bruce Willis is trying. Willis is phoning in his performances now in a lot of his movies. He's at least awake in this film, but he's not interesting.
I think it works for his character in this. I don't know. Again, I heard that criticism, and thinking about Bruce Willis' performances from the last 10 years, he's a stick of wood. I mean, he's.
Well, I would say in Unbreakable, go back and watch Unbreakable. He's a stick of wood in that movie.
Yeah.
Like his character is very, kind of dead faced.
Yeah.
And I think a part of that has to do with, I think he's going through a divorce, and so maybe his character is very numb to life and everything right now. But he is very solemn and straight faced through that whole movie, and so. I mean, that's still in his character
Yeah,
now.
for me, that fits with who his character is. Again, the losses that character has faced. I feel like there's also a certain amount of, he's the hero and I feel like Staple even uses a comic book reference to, he's the reluctant hero. And I feel like some of that, you know, he's not like the plucky, like, let's go do a thing. He's kind of a, like, there's a thing that needs to be done and I'm the person who has to do it. And I feel like there's a certain amount of quiet, you know, solemnity that comes with that. And so I feel like that works. And again, like there are points in the movie, his interactions with Joseph, their scenes together were amazing. The Spencer Treat Clark, who I don't know if he's been in anything besides these two movies.
Yeah, I don't know either, but I really enjoyed him in this.
I'd see him again in something because, yeah, he and Bruce Willis interact really, really well.
Yeah, they had good chemistry. It felt like a grown-up son with his father, and that changing dynamic from being in your care to being alongside of you running a business, and their chemistry together I thought was really good. And I enjoyed his character.
I'll be honest, this is what I would love to see in like a Batman and Robin relationship that we haven't really, you know, but that kind of, you know, and I feel like the comics in some ways have done that with the character Dick Grayson after he kind of grows up and sort of is doing his own thing, but they still partner and work together. I feel like that relationship on screen could be this, but we just get like the Chris O'Donnell interpretation. You know, but this to me was a really satisfying Batman and Robin relationship.
Yeah, or he was kind of like an oracle guy in the chair, kind of thing, where he was on the computer and giving him guidance as he was going along. I liked that he had, because he was a kid and he wanted so much for his father to be a superhero when he was a kid. And now he's growing up and he is a sidekick and he's so happy to be that. And he's giving him guidance, keeping up with the police pings on him and so Bruce Willis, I mean, say what you want about him phoning in performances these days, but so I'll piggyback off of that one with David Dunn's character is wasted in this film. He has no arc. He adds nothing. I've seen a lot of criticism of that as well, that he's just like David Dunn, the character is just there. Like
I would completely combat that, because to me the only character that sells your concern as a member of the audience that maybe these are actually not real superheroes is Bruce Willis. In the scene where all three of them are meeting with Dr. Staple, the way Bruce Willis as David Dunn interacts with her and what you see on his face as he's kind of processing it is different. And
that his surety starts cracking.
McAvoy, you get the different like personalities starting to be like, well, maybe the Beast isn't, you know, maybe this isn't real. And like, that's one of those tell, not show. But with Bruce Willis, you could tell like the wheels are turning and it makes you wonder and kind of question everything. Yeah, I mean, he doesn't have as much of a dramatic arc, but the question, which in some ways it's like second guessing Unbreakable. You know, by the end of Unbreakable, he's like, yeah, this is who I am.
Well, his arc. I mean, you could argue that he has no arc in this if you want, but I'd say his arc is the opposite of that in Unbreakable, that he doesn't believe he is a metahuman, superpowered person, to which he has to be convinced that he is, and by the end of it, he accepts that he is that. Whereas in this one, he believes he is. He's out there doing vigilante stuff and taking down criminals, to which then he is brought back to, no, you think you are, but you're not. She's trying to convince him that he is not the hero, but where in this one, the third part is he does stick. I mean, but it isn't until his very end that maybe it is until his very end that he's sure of that. Well, I guess no, because he busts through the door.
Yeah, I would say that's the point. That's in the arc where that part of
and that's out of necessity because Glass is egging him on to get out of there. And so, yeah, that is when he breaks through the door. He's convinced again that he is.
So, yeah, he definitely fits in the film and belongs. I mean, how else do you get the Horde or the Beast to be imprisoned if you don't have those two face off at the beginning? You know, so he has important plot purposes to fulfill with the other characters as well.
Yeah, and people could use that as negative. He's just a plot device rather than a character. But I would also say, yeah, he did get the Horde into position for this film to happen.
And I would say he's important because his strength against the Horde made the Horde question himself even more, because you can tell even in that fight, it's like, how are you countering me?
Right, which then plays into them questioning, is putting our faith in the beast, like were we right to do that? And that is a good jumping off point for Staple to come in and be like, the gun was faulty, you didn't withstand. The
bars were old and
people can free climb on anything they can do.
You had videos of free climbers.
Right, yeah, it's possible to be done. And so and also in the room of them three, two are villains and one is a hero. Yeah. And so regardless of where the movie is going, you are still rooting for, if it was three villains, would you care? Like, they're stuck in a mental institute. Yeah, sure, keep them there. Yeah. Whereas it's like, no, he shouldn't be here. And so you're immediately against this.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah, them being incarcerated right here.
I do. In some ways, I feel like David Dunn it falls into the same character archetype of Superman or Leonardo from the Ninja Turtles. And those characters can be really hard to write sometimes, too. I mean, you need somebody who's just there to, take the next hill and to be the leader. And that's who David Dunn is. He's a good heart who has values. And I mean, there are exceptions, the way Captain America has been written in the Marvel films. He's that, in a lot of ways, the same character, but they give him interesting, things to do. But I feel like a lot of times, because of who that character is and because of what their values are, it can be really hard to make them interesting and flawed, because that's not who they are.
Right. And the arc of putting Superman's morals to the test, or trying to find his breaking point of where will he snap and kill, like will he kill Lex Luthor for the greater good, or will he ever cross that line? That's a kind of a played out arc and trope in superhero, whereas this is different. This is just questioning, are you even what you think you are, which is, you don't get that with the Superman or the Captain America characters. It's a different way of approaching it. So switching to a different character, I've got a couple criticisms here that go well together. That being, Samuel L. Jackson's character doesn't show up until halfway through the film, and the second act in the hospital is largely just slow and repetitive.
Yeah, and Jaws doesn't show up until the third act of Jaws either. Oh, man, isn't it such a bummer when something just has such a slow build and doesn't ever really appear, even though you think maybe there could be something going on?
Yeah, but I can actually see Samuel L. Jackson. He's not underwater. I see him there, and I'm like poking him, move, do something.
If they'd put Samuel L. Jackson underwater, that would have been confusing, because that was Bruce Willis's thing. So, no, I loved Samuel L. Jackson in this film. Every moment of it, even whenever he was in the catatonic, because it's such a this is the Lex Luthor that I've always wanted. Films have not executed on this, but somebody who is calculating genius, and they're put in that kind of position, he's expertly manipulating people by doing nothing. It's amazing.
Yeah. Well, and it was a nice little, I think, a call to both Lex Luthor and the Joker, those two incredible villains from DC Comics, because there is, in The Dark Knight Returns, you have a Joker who has been incarcerated for many, many years, and Batman retired, and so he's given up, and he's largely catatonic because he doesn't have his playmate anymore. Yep. And so when he returns, then the spark, with Joker, the spark inside comes out, and then he breaks out and causes terror. And
for me, it's
kind of the same in this.
In a lot of ways, Samuel L. Jackson by himself could not break out. Or, that character, Mr. Glass, Elijah Price, he does not have the requisite skills and capabilities to get out. And if he did, what is he going to do?
Well, yeah, because they even referenced that he had tried in years past. He had tried a couple times to break out and was foiled in those attempts.
And the impression that I even got from that is, if he really wanted to get out, he probably would have gotten out in those situations, but there was no reason to get out. Instead, he was basically
testing the
system and finding out where all the flaws were. But again, if you take the core motivation of this character to be, I want to prove that superheroes are real. Like, again, in Unbreakable, he finds his purpose by identifying that this man is a superhero and that I, by contrast, am the supervillain. At that point, okay, well, what do you do with that? No, my next step, I need a purpose. I'm all about finding a purpose. My purpose is to bring down this organization that's hiding supervillains. So I think there's at least some possibility that he may have known about that organization. It's not directly said, but it seems like he's actively working against the repression of this information.
See, I would push back on that just a little bit, maybe because it seems like they are well hidden in this universe.
Oh, yeah.
And Staple doesn't show up until recently because the orderly there says, we got along fine for years without her. Yeah. She's coming in, changing all kinds of things up.
Yeah.
And so I guess for me, maybe her being inserted into...
And I would say that while he probably doesn't know the organization by name, again, you're sitting there and you've just made the discovery that what you believed all along was true, that superheroes and supervillains exist. There are these people who are metahumans. Why doesn't everybody know? Why is this information not out there? And a person like Elijah, again, he probably doesn't know the organization, but he probably has sussed out that, there's something working to actively prevent this information from getting out. And so, I mean, really his end goal in the movie isn't let's escape and let's go do a bit. It's let's document this so that it is able to be shared and so that people can know.
He may not have known that there is a large organization actively working against, but he had already been convinced people like this exist, and so maybe different circumstances, governments, different things are sussing them out as well, and you never hear about them because they're put away or deemed to be crazy or weird or something like that.
And so for me, what he does in the movie, he doesn't have the pieces that he needs for his goal. As soon as they arrive, the gears start turning.
Right. So a good chess player, he's
been biding his time.
Right. Refusing to make the move that would cause the game to then get to the end game that he's wanting. Another one is because Samuel L. Jackson is catatonic, Glass is catatonic, a lot of it. Another criticism is that there's no play or chemistry between Jackson and Willis in this movie like there was in Unbreakable. They don't get to play off each other.
That's true.
Like they did in that movie, and so that's a big disappointment. Which, I could see. If you watched Unbreakable and you loved, which I do, I love their back and forth chemistry. I like how they have a camaraderie together, even though they start off at odds, and he doesn't like Elijah, and he kind of is won over by him. He's kind of quirky, I think, and he reluctantly starts having that friendship with him, and that's good play of them together. And they don't have that in this movie, but maybe it's for me, it's not the story being told either.
That's not the story being told, and if this film had no chemistry between any of the characters, I could see missing that. but there are so many great interactions between the other characters. I mean, the sequences that you get with Samuel L. Jackson and James McAvoy, those are
the scene when he comes in his room is
Yeah.
so great. I love their conversation they have.
That interaction, what you get with Sarah Paulson and all three of them, like there is enough character chemistry for other movies, actually. And so for me, I can see somebody being disappointed. So I'm not gonna take that away from you if you were disappointed that those two characters didn't get to have more moments together. But for me, there was enough character chemistry that it still felt it felt a part of the Unbreakable universe. Like it had that element still.
Yeah. So there's a lot of critics who believe that this film fails in the third act. That the ending is where it's bloated and full of itself, and it takes the setup that in the first two acts and just completely fumbles it in the end.
Yeah, that one's interesting, especially the bloated idea. I can see. In some ways, I feel like this is a criticism of M. Night Shyamalan as a filmmaker, and even in the theater, I got a little bit of that Return of the King. Wait, is that
the final Lord of the Rings, where there's like the multiple endings kind of criticism?
So at the end of the film, I was starting to get a little bit of that Return of the King feeling where
when does this actually end?
Yeah. It's ending. But it's not ending. And it's okay. It's coming to. It's not ending. And I feel like, ironically, Peter Jackson and M. Night Shyamalan, I think both have a little bit of hubris as filmmakers. Like I think they think they're the stuff. And so I can.
They both cameo in their stuff.
That's true.
They like to do that.
So I feel like it worked in this movie, and I generally enjoyed it. If it had done any more, I would have probably been annoyed by it. And
I would say the scene that was the worst at that for me was the staple in the comic book. So I was like, what is this? Why are we here with her? Where's this going?
Yeah.
And it's for the reveal of he had a different end game that she didn't know about, but it was a bit, and then it was again a tell don't show kind of thing where there's that nerd in the background being like, oh, he's always 3 steps ahead, that's why he's the greatest villain. And that was a bit cheesy and like, what's happening here?
Yeah,
so I get that.
Well, my thing was, why is that character in a comic book store? Like, I get that they're like suppressing superheroes, but she like actively does research by going to random comic shops. Like
is she feeling like guilty, like for what she's done a little bit?
And
so
I didn't
she's
get that impression. Like,
because she's so stern-faced. You can't read her.
So for me, it's just like, why is she here? But then I'll admit, I actually did like that scene a little bit because it felt like a callback to Unbreakable to me. So
there were several comic book store scenes.
Yeah,
it's like, what comic book shops paid you to film in here? Yeah, because there's the Anya Taylor-Joy getting her comics, which was another telling instead of show of like, the first comic was this and this is what it was about, and it's like, I mean, you have the internet, you're a teenager, why are you here?
Yeah.
And then his son is in there, is like, everyone goes to the comic book shop for research. It's like, you have the internet.
That's what we do.
Let me Google that for you.
And maybe that's the better criticism, is that nobody was operating under 21st century rules. Everybody was, still.
Well, maybe this is a universe that doesn't have Google.
Oh, they don't have the internet. Oh, wait, except they share all the videos at the end.
Oh yeah, that's true.
Oh man, this is tricky stuff.
That breaks down. So
yeah, I can.
The ending.
It was a little much. In some ways, like the fight scene almost felt like a repetition of the fight scene early in the film between the Horde or Beast and
punch, crawl, like hold each other, with wrapped up. Yeah, that was very repetitive, and you're also waiting for them to be done. there to go to the building.
Yeah.
Because you're like, oh, this is just the tussle before the big fight at the building. And so you're kind of wondering, this is a little...
See, for me, though, I actually, once they started fighting in the yard, there's like a wide shot where you can see them on either end squaring off. Okay,
I liked that
I'll be
shot.
honest. I hated the idea of them having a fight at that building. Partly because I've got a little bit of Marvel fatigue. It's great what Marvel does in their films and their universe, and there's so much good about it, but there are some times whenever it's just like, we got to get to the scene where everybody punches everybody and it's a big spectacle. And I'm like, don't tell me, because like this movie is nuanced and it feels different. And the Unbreakable universe has been different so far.
Which is why I really like Winter Soldier, when you think they're heading into a den of other Winter Soldiers just to get there and see they've already been snuffed out by what's his face?
Is that Civil War?
Is that Civil War? What did I say? Winter Soldier?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah. Civil War. You still have the punch up between him and Iron Man, but that's a friend against friend, so that's a little different than your normal fight. But going into that, you're thinking, oh, this is going to be that normal showdown between a bunch of no-name faces hitting on Cap.
Well, and, like the end of Avengers was a big fight in a city. And the thing is, Marvel's not the only one who does this. I mean, DC, they do their
absolutely.
big...
Yeah.
Everything
Fox
has to...
as well with...
Yeah, and it, like, the final act, they always work up to this big, like, fight. And so even if a movie has been smart to that point, it kind of, like, deviates into being dumb then. And so for me, like, I actually really enjoyed the Doctor Strange film, which... it gets to the end and like it's spectacle, but he's not able to punch the villain in the face to win. Like he has to outsmart him by creating the time loop.
Yeah.
And so for me, that was really smart. And this movie up to that point had been so smart. And I'm like, oh, they're gearing up. They're going to go and it's going to be this big spectacle. And then that shot where they're in front of the building, their face, I'm like, it's not going to happen at the building. It's going to go down right here. And I'm like, this is so low key, and I love it. And so for me, from that point on, I felt like there was a moment where, as McAvoy's character was about to leave, I'm like, oh, okay, maybe this movie's going to keep going. And
because he does we'll finish this at the building and turns to go. Yeah,
and so I had been really satisfied, though, that it's wrapping up in this confined location and that it's not this big, because again, that's part of even the superheroics of the Unbreakable universe isn't that it's the big comic booky, it's like the extreme end of what humans could do. It's real in a way that's different than the reality that like Nolan or the Marvel films have tried to do, where like those they kind of play it being in a real world, but then like Iron Man invents a fake element or something like that. Well,
that's another that goes really well, because that's another criticism of all modern superhero movies set themselves in the real world, and then they add in the super elements to it. And so there's other superhero. One criticism is there's other superhero movies that do this better. That it's in a grounded universe, and then you add supers. And so what this movie is trying to do is nothing special or nothing like out there or different than what we've already seen.
I've not seen the small screen Marvel stuff, so the like Netflix series.
Oh yeah, Punisher and Daredevil,
Luke Cage.
Oh, Luke Cage, yeah, Jessica Jones.
Yeah, I've not seen those, and they may do this, but one of the things that I like is just how much more real these characters, especially like David Dunn, and even Kevin, the Horde. I feel like these are people who could live where real people live, whereas I feel like especially in like the Marvel universe or even like Bruce Wayne and the Nolan Batmans try to be super serious and super real, but he's a bajillionaire. I'm like, that immediately there's a level of fakeness to that. And so for me,
a billionaire who's not constantly just on vacation, but he actually cares. There's no billionaires that care about the little man.
And so for me, I like that, David Dunn is a guy. I mean, in the first film, in Unbreakable, he was a security guard. And he's so ordinary. Like he's extremely ordinary.
Now, I have seen some of those Netflix series, and I would say, that's funny that you brought that up. I would say Daredevil, the Netflix Daredevil, could fit in this universe.
I haven't seen that, so I can't speak to that, but that would be the only place I can conceive of that being.
Like his power, like he's blind, and his power is that he has super hearing and all of his other senses are heightened. And I could easily see Mr. Glass explaining that to him.
Oh, sure.
Sitting there and be like, oh, you have your other senses have just gone to super extremes, and that's why you can do all the amazing things. Because he's not powered in that series. He gets the crap kicked out of him, is bleeding all the time, like gets bruises and cuts galore in that series. So I could see that fitting in.
Chronicle is the only other movie that comes to mind for me that really does what Unbreakable and Split and Glass are doing. So I don't think this has been overdone at all. Like, I feel like this approach to reality and the way these films add reality is very different than the way the big studios and their blockbusters have added reality.
Well, and I've heard criticisms of just give them, do they have powers or they don't have powers? And this is getting into the end universe criticism.
Right. Hey, Nick, before we go on, go ahead and stop there for just a second.
Okay.
Have you looked at the clock?
No, you do that.
Yes, I do that. And I'm noticing that we're getting a little long, even for us. I mean, our listeners have gotten accustomed to us talking for forever. But I think we've gone forever plus right now. So maybe we should go ahead and break up this discussion and continue next week.
Okay, yeah, because I've got a lot more I want to say about this. And so this could definitely go long.
as much as I would love to keep this episode unbroken, I think we probably need to split it like glass.
It's becoming a beast of an episode.
Oh!
And
so the horde of listeners, please stay tuned. Join us next week as we conclude our discussion about Glass, M. Night Shyamalan's latest film.